Hello, I'm Rick Schildhouse, and because things on the internet seem to lose their date references pretty quick, today is Friday, October 25th, 2024. On Friday, September 6th, 2024, we visited the Jackson Barracks Museum in New Orleans, Louisiana. The day was rainy. You'll see it in the pictures, and this is a really nice museum. It's on a secure military installation. If you don't have a military ID card, you might want to call ahead to find out how you get on. Outside, there are several aircraft and a lot of armor and artillery, which is really cool. Vast majority is very well labeled, which I really enjoy. And inside the museum is basically zones, which were really nice. Zones of various times of conflict and service. And I'm going to start the video off with the flood from Katrina. This place was under 6 feet of water, so with the Katrina flood. So let's get on with the video. It's not that long, but this is a really, really good museum, and we spent about 3 hours there. We got there we got there afternoon, and I think it closed at 4:30 or 5 o'clock, and we were there as they were starting to close up, and that finished our visit. This is a really, really good museum. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy it. Hope to see you in another one. We visited the Jackson Barracks Military Museum in New Orleans, Louisiana on Friday, September 6, 2024. And you'll see in the videos, it was raining, and it was a really nice visit. It is in a secure facility. You have to present ID to get in. I've got a military ID card. I made it. There was only one other individual, I think, in the museum visitor, and I think there were 2 staff members. Really nice museum. You're going to see this as we go. And one of the first things that caught me by surprise was this. Well, it flooded, and these early photos are of the flood, and you're going to see some of the aircraft that are in these flood photos as we go through these. There was a lot of water here. This was Katrina. This UH-1, which is actually an Iroquois nicknamed Huey, seen in other videos, was stuck in a roof during the rescue effort, and they had to bring in an H-47 Chinook, which is a heavy lift helicopter, to help get it unstuck. These are classic grounds. They are beautifully maintained grounds with quite a bit of history underneath them. Louisiana National Guard, I guess, is now the custodian. And there are a number of aircraft parked around it. You saw some of them in the flood photos, and you're going to see how much water this place had. It probably had 6 feet of water. T-33 Shooting Star, which has a J-33 engine, worked on those in high school, and then an F-4 presentation with a lot of information. And I'm going to kind of break it up here a little bit, because there's a F-4 cockpit trainer inside that you can sit in, and I put those photos in there too. And then there's an F-15 out on a pedestal. With the F-4 cockpit trainer inside the building, you can get in it, you can sit in it, and you can find out just what it feels like to sit in one of these things. And there's also a pilot dummy set up with flight gear that I used in a totally different airplane, and then a display of the 500-pound bombs, which were frequently carried under the F-4 in Vietnam as air-to-mud weapons, air-to-ground weapons, and then a variety of the missiles that the F-4 and the F-15 and other fighter F-14 aircraft carried. After Korea, the U.S. military figured that virtually the close air-to-air dogfight with cannons was going to be outdated, and everything was going to be done with missiles. In early Vietnam, we found out that was not going to be the case, and we had to come up with a solution. So the first thing was put a gun pod on the F4, and this is the initial gun pod. Later, they installed it in the aircraft. It was raining, so things were wet, and some of the signage has already taken some weather hits. The McDonnell Douglas F-15 Eagle was out on a pedestal, and this beautifully maintained Douglas A-26 Invader was out there too. And as you can see with the Invader, there was a fair amount of water on the ground, so I didn't venture too close. The AT-11 Kansan was used as a trainer, multi-purpose trainer. It's a version of the Beech 18, the Twin Beech, which is fantastic, and it's got the nose section to train bombardiers and navigators. This F-102 General Dynamics Delta Dart was sitting just a little bit through beyond or behind too much water for me to wade through. This grass that you see in the foreground was very wet, and that's an F-86 radar intercept type aircraft, if I'm not mistaken, from North American. This Hiller OH-23 Raven was sitting up by the building itself. Looked like it could have used a little maintenance. I like good signage at a museum. I like signage I can photograph without getting glare. And as you'll see, I had pretty good luck at the Jackson Army Barracks in New Orleans. And these are some items of armor and field equipment that were sitting out on the grounds in the rain, so it's raining. And I'm trying to give you the signage and then the item that's there. And I've tried to group it by country. So if it's in the U.S. run, it's mostly U.S. equipment. Some of it's pretty cool. I enjoyed walking around in the rain and shooting these as we went. I was laughing while we were there because I did Desert Storm. You know, I lived in Fujairah United Airborne and flew throughout the theater during Desert Storm and the follow-on Desert Saber, whatever the follow-on action was, and landed at a couple of different military fields and found bulldozers sitting there trying to keep the sand and compact the sand and move the materials around. And then I find this particular armored bulldozer at the museum. The bulldozers I saw out in Desert Storm were not armor equipped. They were just run-of-the-mill bulldozers. I will comment positively on the signage, because when I look at this and I'm looking, say, at the M59 as the video goes by, what is it? It's an armored personnel carrier. Who operated it? The United States. When did they operate it? 1953 to 1960. Armored personnel carrier, okay, fine. FMC Corporation built it. Its weight was 42,600 pounds. Its armament, 50 caliber M2 machine gun with 2,205 rounds. It has two GMC 302 cubic inch six-cylinder Model 302 six-cylinder engines in it, 292 combined, so I assume they're straight sixes. Max speed 32, range 300 miles, and a crew of 2 plus 10 passengers. And it tells you stuff. And this, it was developed as a amphibious low-cost replacement for the M75. 2 civilian truck engines reduced the armor to keep production costs low, but ultimately proved unfavorable, and it was replaced by the M113 in the 1960s. Probably went into Vietnam and didn't do real good. One of the things on the signage is what is the serial number of the item you're looking at, and the other one is the item number. And the item number, if I'm not mistaken from working with other museums, is documentation of the artifact in a museum, whereas the serial number is what the military had. Everything in the military seems to have a serial number, including the personnel. When I started, my service number was my Social Security number, After I retired, when I retired, it was still my social security number, and shortly after that they changed, and we no longer use, for whatever reason, and I kind of know why, no longer use your social security number as your service number. This M5 Stuart light tank was inside the building, and so was that Cadillac. And we're going to be jumping around because I tried to keep the equipment appropriate, but the tank also fit into the rest of the display, and I kind of disrupted that as we go along. The displays inside the building were absolutely super, but we're going to jump back outside and see some of the other things that were outside, like cannons and what's referred to as rifles. Some of these cannons and rifles, as they're classified, I'm not an artillery guy, my dad was, were properly labeled as replicas, but there's a fair amount of information. Unfortunately, because of the rain, the condition of the signage, the sky, whatever else, didn't get real good pictures of the signage on them. Most of these rifles and cannons were out in front of the museum itself. Now we're going to walk back into the artillery area where these things were on display, and we're going to pick up the Soviet stuff. Into the Soviet stuff that was on display outside, and this MT-LB Soviet 1968 to 1991, it's labeled as a towing vehicle. Okay, fine. It's part of the recovery things to get damaged equipment out of the field so you can fix them and put them back in the field. And I think I saw another one of these in the Sirocco Summit Museum for George S. Patton, where his training site here is in Southern California, and it was rigged, identified as rigged to fight forest fires, and parentheses on the sign was street riots. Using high pressure water, you have to appreciate how the Soviets do things. Well, now they're gone, but now they call them Russians, but they're still Soviets. The Soviets shared a fair amount of technology with the Chinese, with a number of other countries. They either licensed it, permitted copies, got production runs. So this particular M1939 automatic air defense gun, they're giving it credit for shooting 14,000 Axis planes during World War II. That's a lot of aircraft to come down out of the sky. This D-30 howitzer from the Soviet Union, been in use since 1963 to up till this sign was done, is kind of interesting because they tow it around by using that hitch point on the front of the barrel. Well, it's called utility. This is kind of an overview of the armor area. It was a large parade type field, and a number of pieces were out there, and you had good shots of most of them. Then we're going to move back inside. This Renault 1917 FT was part of an exhibit, which I wish I would have taken the context of the exhibit a little bit better than I did. And then we are going to step off into the presentations that were done for Germany World War I, Germany World War II, I think is the way I have these set up. The presentation of the World War I stuff was interesting, and like this heavy mine Waffer from 1910, that looks like an interesting thing. It said it could fire 20 rounds a minute, would be interesting. And a number of small items like the binoculars, this Mauser broomstick pistol, this gas mask, and this air box thing was there. And this, I didn't have any good signage to tell me what this little green cannon was. I assume, since it's the color and the guy standing there, I assume it's German. I'm not sure. I didn't find any signage for it. And when I say I didn't find any signage, it may have been there, because as you can see with those 3 rifles, and I clipped the photo so that we could identify what those 3 rifles were, the signage at the museum is very, very thorough, and I really appreciated that. But somehow, whether it was there or not, because we were kind of on a timeline, and I would like to have spent more time there, but we were operating on a timeline. World War I is the war that took the U.S. military from the horse to the mechanized system. By and large, we still had horses, but not significant numbers of them. The Germans still used horses in the World War II very, very heavily, and if you read anything on World War II in Europe, you will, and where after D-Day, where they're fighting through Normandy, France, into Germany, the lowlands, the Netherlands, Belgium, you'll always find references to a lot of dead horses laying around, because they were shot up by the infantry, by the artillery, by the aircraft, as they were pulling German military equipment. We've transitioned to a really good display of barracks during World War II, U.S. military barracks during World War II, and this was very well done. The museum is very nicely set up in zones or areas once you get inside, and I think this one is covering possibly the Korean War. This is a newer vehicle, or possibly the Vietnam War. I'm going to guess the Vietnam War because of the age of the Jeep, and it's the Jeep ambulance. And we're going to move off into some other stuff. There's a lot of weapons. Most of them inside are small arms and Browning machine guns, and as we move through this, some curiosity items. I remember seeing somewhere else one of these mail-a-phone machines, mail-a-voice machines, and I'm not sure where I saw it, but it was available for use. It might have been in Japan, in the MWR, Morale, Welfare, and Recreation facility. Tony, Orlando, and Don tie yellow ribbon around the old oak tree was just adopted in particular with Desert Storm, and I stayed in Desert Storm to the follow-on action, so I didn't come home and see any of that, but I understand, and I got pictures of it, and it was really beautiful, really interesting. And protecting the force, it's essential that it's an integrated system. You have to understand how the military operates in an integrated system. I'll cover you, Andy will cover Bob, Bob will cover Charlie, Charlie will cover Doug, Doug will cover Ernie, Ernie will cover Fred, and it just goes on until it comes back to Andy. I'm a naval aviator, so most of my flying, because of the aircraft, was off the carrier and in the various playground areas that I was at. And the first one where I was shore-based, and the last one I got to play in, so to speak, was Desert Storm, and got to view it firsthand. And while I was up at Kuwait International, I think it was the third day the airfield was liberated, we had a Israeli conscript pop out of a spider hole, and he was totally confused because he was pointing his gun at everybody and shouting bang, 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 and we were not falling down. And a Marine gunning sergeant screaming, don't shoot, don't shoot, don't shoot, goes up, cold cocks the guy with his M9 handgun and rips his AK away from him. And that ended the situation. Didn't get him killed, so he got to go home. During Desert Storm, we stored our mop gear, our chemical protection stuff in the aircraft, and we flew with it all the time, just in case. We didn't expect to have to use it We stepped into Operation Enduring Freedom, or whatever Iraq's 2004 issue was called, and that was a totally different warfare with the IED issues, and the combatants that aren't in uniform. They obviously lost somebody they thought was very important to them. And the equipment has since changed because of deaths like this. The Humvee was good in Desert Storm because we weren't fighting IEDs, we weren't fighting extensive minefields, whatever else. In the 2004 time frame, the entire type of warfare had changed, therefore the casualties are different. During that last tirade, I guess you would call it, we moved off into the small arms and bayonets area, and the museum has a lot of small arms and bayonets, and they are all labeled, which is like really cool. And they go back from very, very old to pretty darn new, and it was informative. You know, the rifleman is the key to success of the infantry, actually key to success of the Army and the Marine Corps, and from then on, the infantry is supported by the artillery, is supported by aviation, is supported by the supply people, the medical people, everybody else. But the front guy, the guy standing there facing the enemy closest, is the rifleman. So when you look at these small arms, that's the tool. That's the first step to winning the war. The M16, which is the center of this picture, is out there in numerous versions, and I think what's right above it is an M14, maybe a couple of M14s. The M16 is a 22 caliber rifle. Yeah, it shoots a bullet, wow, at 3,000 feet per second. It's 53 grains or 55 grains, so not real powerful. Miscellaneous stuff starting to pop up. The McClellan saddle, if you read Civil War history, you'll appreciate what McClellan did and did not do during the Civil War, and numerous other things that are just coming in to fill this museum out. And it was a very, very informative museum. I really enjoyed going through it. We really enjoyed going through it. Unfortunately, we were time pressured, so we got there late, but we also had another schedule later in the day, so we got both ends. But it is a really nice, really well maintained museum. As we wrap up this presentation, I'm just going to reiterate, it's a very, very good museum. It depicts many, many years of history associated with the area, with the state of Louisiana. It depicts a number of times of conflict and war. It depicts at least one disaster. There is no admission charge. They do ask for donations. Great, not a problem there. There is a fantastic portfolio. There's a fantastic booklet that is available when you walk in, and it's free. And the two people that we saw that were working in the museum, we interacted with both of them. One of them was cleaning exhibits, the other one was arranging something, and both of them were extremely friendly, extremely helpful. So this is a great visit if you're in the New Orleans area, and I think you're going to have to go through an ID checkpoint to get onto the facility. I'm not sure if it's restricted. You might want to contact the museum itself and see what their restrictions are. I have a military ID card. I got on without a problem, and the base security people directed me where to go. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll just let it run out. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you again.